So you've now hopefully played an exhibition game or two with some starting rosters, but Blood Bowl is at its best with an ongoing league where you keep the same team from game to game. You see your players develop and improve or pick up potentially career-ending injuries. And players improve by earning star player points, or SPPs, and then they spend those to improve by picking up new skills or improvements to their stat line. We're going to look at how you earn SPPs, how to spend them and level up, and an overview of some of the skills available. Star player points are earned for the most part by doing something good on the pitch, and there's a short list of what these things are, which you'll see come up on the screen. So you earn 1 point for throwing a complete pass. So this means that a player, which is probably a thrower, throws an accurate pass, and it was caught at the first attempt by the person it was intended for. By the first attempt, I don't mean like if it's re-rolled, it doesn't count, just that if they drop it and it bounces around a bit before they catch it, it doesn't count. So they haven't caught a pass in that case, they've caught a bouncing ball. But this because you can earn experience from throwing passes. That's one of the areas where I said earlier on in the series, way back, that elves have taken a bit of a hit there because it used to be all based on agility. So elves could just throw the ball around with loads of 2+ rolls and just generate all this experience sort of by just chucking the ball about and messing around with it. That's something they've sort of lost a bit because it's only really their throwers that can do it reliably now. So it's just one thing to bear in mind if you've played elves in previous editions. But also with throwing, big guys with throw teammate now get a SPP for successfully throwing a teammate. So this means making a superb throw, like where the player doesn't scatter, and then the throw player lands successfully. That's a nice little bonus for big guys. You can sometimes find it a bit difficult to generate up experience with these things. One of the things they do excel at, though, you get 2 points if you call a casualty from a block. So this is if a player you're blocking or being blocked by goes down, breaks armor, and then gets that 10 to 12 on the injury table, or 9 for a stunting. And this is just for blocks, though. So if anyone falls over or fails a dodge and hurts themselves, there's no points available. And it doesn't count either for serfs or for fouls. So although the prayer to Nuffle table can unlock those last two as opportunities to score points. But it's basically about throwing blocks, hurting people by doing it. 2-star player points. 3 points for a touchdown, so this is quite a straightforward one. So the player that is standing in the end zone holding the ball is the one who scores, and they get 3 points. Pass interference. So there are 2 levels to this. So if you successfully interfere with a pass, so you knock the pass out of the air, you earn 1-star player point. But if you manage to catch the ball to convert it into an interception, you get 2 points instead. So they don't stack. It's just either 1 point or 2, depending on whether you caught it or not. And finally, the MVP for the game earns 5-star player points. Now, as the rules are written, the MVP is selected completely randomly, just from everybody in the team. And I know this isn't popular. The last edition's MVP rules were that you nominated 3 players from your team, and then randomly selected one of those with a D3 roll. And that was helpful for trying to get your MVP where it's going to be helpful and count. And if you're playing in a league, the organisers might use something like that or something completely different to decide MVPs. So yeah, if you're playing for a league, check with the person who's organising it how they're going to do that. So once you've earned some SPPs, you can choose to spend them on an upgrade from this list here. So this whole system of player levelling is completely new for this edition. And for a long time, this was just a 2d6 roll of fixed points in a player's development that is going to tell you what to take as you advance. And that was usually going to be to choose a primary skill. So this is one of the biggest changes to the rules, and it's something that sort of really freshened things up. And it allows you the option to take very specific upgrades. You do, though, still have the option to lean into some randomness if you want to take the risk for a lower points cost in most cases. So your first 2 options are a random or a selected primary skill. Let's put up our humans and undead again to talk about this. So primary skills are in this column here. And most players are going to have primary access to general skills and perhaps one other. And there are 5 categories of skills. So they're general, agility, strength, passing, and mutation. And mutations are only available to a few teams. And actually, I'm just going to swap in. Let's replace undead with Skaven because they're a team that can take mutations. So there are 12 skills in each of these categories. We're not going to look at all the skills, obviously, because that's like 60 skills. But you're going to find them all described in the rulebook from page 74. So a human lineman, or Skaven lineman in fact, can spend 3 points to randomly generate a general skill, or they can spend 6 points to choose a general skill. And if you're choosing, you might take something like block or wrestle on them, which are 2 of those sort of general skills. Or you can save up a bit more and spend 12 points on a secondary skill. So if the human could take an agility skill, like say dodge, or a strength skill like guard or mighty blow. So earning more points on a player gives you the chance to more specifically build a player into a certain role and to be good at certain things. You do also have the option of spending a bit less, those 6 points, to take a random secondary skill. But that is a bit risky because if you want a secondary skill on somebody, you probably have something specific in mind. But it is there as an option. Those 6 points might be better spent just choosing a primary skill, because then you know you're definitely going to get something effective. When you do generate a random skill, so you select a category first, so maybe say a strength skill, and then you generate one of the 12 from that category, which uses a table you can find on page 74. In the old system, you only got to choose secondary skills if you rolled a double with your 2d6 roll on that advancement table. So it's like very much up to chance that you might get something a bit out of the ordinary on someone. And rolling higher numbers on that table, sort of 10 or higher on 2d6, that used to give you the option to take a stat increase. And now stat increases instead of just the most expensive option that you have on here, which is at 18 points. And once you spend those 18 points, you can't then even choose which stat goes up. It's a d16 roll, which is going to give you a couple of options. And you always have the fallback of taking a secondary skill of your choice instead if you don't like your roll. The table for that roll is on page 71 of the rulebook. But something to think about, if you're going to save up this many points for a stat increase, you probably want to look at the 3 most useful ones, which are movement, agility and strength. And you think if your player is going to benefit from taking any one of those 3, that's quite a safe way to spend those points. If you get sort of stuck with movement and you're really hoping for strength or agility, you could be wasting those points. So that's an inexpensive way to take a secondary skill, which is probably going to be more useful than movement for a lot of players. But some players can really benefit from that extra point of movement. Probably the quicker players on your team, just to make them even faster and open up that gap a bit more. Passing is only really going to be useful for throwers. I don't see any other players that are really going to benefit that much from that, unless you're really leaning into throw teammate with a big guy. And armor value is generally just not worth the value of it. Skills are pretty much always more useful than armor value increases. One last thing to highlight, so big guys, which we did just mention, so the ogre and the rat ogre, actually mummies too on the undead team, they only have primary access to the strength skills, but all of them really can make good use of the block skill, which is a general skill. And in the previous version, you're sort of always hoping for a double to come up on their advances, so you can give them block for just a bit of reliability. But now you can make sure they get block, you just have to save up extra points to make sure they have it. It's just more expensive. Actually, that wasn't the last thing. As players improve, these advances get more expensive, so you need to spend more points to improve them, the better they get. That table, again, is on page 71 with all the costs and all the options. When it comes to developing players, we obviously can't look here at all of them in detail. But the current system, very different for people who've been playing this game for a while. It does make players a lot more customizable than they've ever been, like we've already mentioned. And it's just a bit more expensive to get the specific things you want. I'm going to refer you again to the Bonehead podcast, where they've covered player development in quite a bit of detail. So they have many, many videos that look at this across all the teams, and I'll link their channel again below. What I want to mention here, though, is developing a team rather than players. And if you couldn't hear it, I just italicized the word team, because this is about making sure your developed players fit together and cover the various things your team's going to need to do between them. We can sort of think of this as a spectrum too. I know we use spectrums quite a bit, but you might want to find your place somewhere between these two examples. So let's look at a human team. Now this is on Blood Bowl 2, which uses an older rule set, so the stats look different with no passing, and there's the old AG and AV scores. So humans, they have throwers and catchers, and that sort of suggests things already that these players can do. So the throwers, even more so in the current rules, they're best at retrieving, throwing the ball, and catchers have that catch skill for receiving passes, and they're the quickest players on the team. There are different ways you can develop throwers and catchers as well, but for this example, I will look at the 4 blitzers. So the 4 blitzers on the team. You might not be familiar with these icons, but you can see that all 4 of them have been developed in exactly the same way. And the skills they've been given are Guard, Mighty Blow, and Stand Firm. These are all primary skills, so they're cheap and easy to take, and they're going to make these blitzers very effective players, and that's going to cover several bases. So that's sort of one extreme. You decide on an effective set of advances for a player, and then you just develop all the players of the same type in that same way, giving them the same advances. The other extreme, though, and I'm much closer to this when I talk about team building, is not to just have all your players do the same thing, but to work more like a real sports team, which I think mostly is just more fun. But to take a sort of absurd example of this, like Lionel Messi is like not universally but widely regarded as the best soccer player in the world. But you wouldn't want a team made up of 11 of him, because like who's going to go in goal, who's going to defend corners? Like you need players to do the other stuff that the team needs as well. So this human team has its 4 blitzers built completely differently from one another. So one of them has that sort of enforcer build like we had, like with guard, mighty blow and stand firm. Another one is similar but switches out mighty blow for grab, which gives you a bit more pitch control. And the third one is built as a bulldozer to just basically try and take players off the pitch with mighty blow, tackle and frenzy. And this fourth one I've left blank. And in the new system, this could sort of be a bit of a project player. So you maybe save up 18 SPPs on this blitzer to roll a stat increase. And that's going to give them something to make them stand out from the rest of the team. And you can lean into that stat increase to make them a special player. So if they get faster, maybe they become someone who can react quickly on defence to plug holes in your line or take down the ball carrier. With a strength increase, you can sort of make them a more effective version of the enforcer or the bulldozer builds that we've got. And frenzy is particularly effective with higher strength players, a lot safer to use as well. An agility increase is going to give you something that the human team just doesn't have, and it opens up new plays for you. So maybe you save up for a secondary skill afterwards to give them dodge or leap to get them into tight spots. But the main point of this, though, is just to develop your players with some range to them. So more variety is going to give you more tools to pull off different things during the game. Where the other extreme we looked at, it sort of doesn't really give you those same options with just the same player again and again. So we're not going to look at all 60 skills, like I said earlier, but they do start on page 74. You can find a description of each one in there. We are, though, just going to look broadly at what skills do. So 2 main types of skills, really, sort of re-rolls and exceptions. So re-rolls will give players a single re-roll per turn for a specific action. We looked at some of these so far, but this is a complete list of those ones. So from agility skills, you get catch, which is like pretty obvious. Dodge, so one of the benefits of dodge is to re-roll a dodge roll per turn. And sure feet, which is a re-roll on failed rushes. From general skills, you get sure hands, that's for failed pickups. And then a bit of a weird one, Pro allows the player to re-roll a single dice per turn, but only if they roll a 3+ first, and this can help save on team re-rolls a bit. Mutations, which we've not mentioned a lot as yet, has 1 re-roll skill, which is a new one called Monstrous Mouth, and this allows a re-roll on catch rolls, as well as preventing use of a skill called Strip Ball. And Sure Hands actually also has that benefit of you can't use Strip Ball against them. In passing skills, the only re-roll one is Pass, which is just a re-roll when throwing the ball. Strength skills has 1 re-roll as well, which again is a bit weird, and it's Brawler, which is that skill that Black Orcs come with. We looked at a couple of videos ago. This allows a single re-roll of both down result in their turn. So all the rest of the skills make some sort of adjustment or exception to the rules, and a large chunk of these are like a modifier on rolls, and a lot, particularly of mutations. So you might remember from early on in this series that a reroll is more effective mathematically than a +1 modifier. So a particular example might be the extra arms mutation, which gives a +1 modifier to pick up or catch the ball. So if you're leveling a player that has general and mutation access, and you want them to be better at picking up the ball, sure hands is better than extra arms. But the extra benefit of +1 to catches might make you prefer extra arms. So it's sort of up to you to make that call. But if you have a straight choice between a reroll or a +1, the reroll is better for that one thing. And then there are loads of skills that just adjust the rules in some way. So they might negate the effects of other skills like Sure Hands versus Strip Ball, or Juggernaut versus Fend, Stand Firm and Wrestle. Or they might change how the player plays the game. So like Guard, allowing players to assist blocks even where they're marked, or Grab, meaning you can push back in different directions. But there are loads of them. The descriptions of the skills are in the book. And they're pretty good, and they're pretty self-explanatory. And that's about all for this part. A nice short one for this series. And there's one part left to go where I want to look at improving at the game. So this is just you as a coach rather than the players' improvement that we've looked at this time. And this is just going to go over some general strategy bits and point you mostly at some other resources to help you improve.